I don't know what happened to my tank. I keep saying that. Welcome, 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 welcome. This is the Lev Project. My name is Amuna Yisrael, and I've been missing action for a couple of days. It just like a whole whirlwind, just like flew in, and just some things that just pressing, and I'm like my Lev Project. So definitely, I had to come on this afternoon and we also missed two night portions of reading, so we're definitely going to have to catch up. Shout out to all those who inquired, checking on us, making sure all is well. And please also remember that everyone is welcome to lift their voice in this project. And this is why if one person gets overwhelmed, it still goes on. So definitely for those who are listening and you enjoy this and you want to share your voice in helping to it to continue, uh, definitely let me know. Like I said, always hit me up under this video or on social media, and I can arrange for you to come in and you can hold it down, even if I'm here, but I had to do other things. So all praise be to the Most High. Welcome once again. Let me go ahead and share this. I'm gonna get a little bit caught up. The stories, like I said, they have been serving me quite well in just understanding understanding certain mentalities, things that we may have forgotten. It's some serious times, and we always have to keep in the forefront of our mind what's going on. So, hold on one second. All right. All right. So I'm reading out of Weevils in the Wheat. If you don't have the book, like I said, it's available on Amazon. It was compiled from the voices of ex-slaves out of Virginia, or the ex-enslaved. Uh, and if you just put in Weevils in the Wheat, you'll definitely see Opie. You'll see this book come up. And it's, like I said, it has a lot of narratives that could be helpful. So let's jump right on in. Mrs. Molly Booker, 1850. The date of the interview was 1837. And she was at First Baptist Church Old Folks Home in Ludlow Street, Norfolk, Virginia. The interviewer was Claude W. Anderson. The last one we read was Miss Fanny Berry, and she went in. And I noticed that it was a female interviewer, and she was of color, and she was very comfortable in sharing a lot of information with her. So I think also that it depends on the interviewer. Let me go check just for curiosity's sake. In the back of the book, it tells you if the interviewer is male or female. It also tells you if they're quote unquote black or white. So this interviewer who's interviewing this woman, we also have to keep these are the things that people take for granted. But when you investigate as to why someone would be more telling to one individual than the other, has a lot to do with comfort. So Claude Anderson was a Negro interviewing a female, but he was a male. So he's a Negro male. So let's listen. My name is Molly Booker. I was 87 last March. My home is in the country round Glassboro or Goldsboro, North Carolina. My father was a rosin distiller. He went round from place to place doing that type of work. I was never a slave. Interesting. Remember, not everybody was a slave. She says, I was never a slave. My people was what you call free issues. I was born free, or I was freeborn. We came to Virginia after the war. She says, father died and mother come back to her people. Pa's bossman was killed in the war too. I certainly miss my pa. He could read and write too. We used to visit the slaves with grandmother. Most of the masters, listen to this, I got it outlined. Most of the masters wouldn't or would not let free niggas visit their slaves. So there's the division, right? I used to like to go because we was always hungry and the slaves would always give us something to eat. I don't know how deep y'all hearing what's being said here, or maybe it's just me just seeing, Because they were free issues, it was harder. And this is why sometimes people were like, it's better to be a slave because master was over there giving you, but it wasn't for your benefit, it was for his benefit. So she's saying as a child, she liked to visit them because as free issues, there was so many parameters in place that it was hard for them. So the slaves were giving them something to eat. The patty rollers used to bother my father something awful. They come and beat him anytime. Once he went and got his boss men to run them away. They waited years until the war come and the boss men went to war. Then they come one night and got Paul right out of bed, took him out to the road and beat him terrible. They told him they's beating him for telling his old boss man that time. Mama and we all kids stood in the doorway and cried. Don't know whether he'd help much or not, but we all stood there and just cried the same. Mama begged for him right hard too. We couldn't go to any dances because they wouldn't allow us on the plantations. So the plantations is where they used to hold a club. So they were just, even though they were free, they were kind of on the outskirts of society. It says runaways used to come to our house all the time to get something to eat. They stayed in the woods a long time, and their beards grow so long that no one would very well recognize them. They actually looked like wild men. Free issues couldn't go to church. I never went to church till after I was grown. This is again dispelling a lot of generalities. They said the European gave you his religion, so-called say. She's like, free issues couldn't go to church. So you weren't even allowed to go there for them to give it to you. White folks watched you all the time. Poor white children used to catch us and whoop us until they make us call them Marsa and have us draping curtsy to them. Then they beat us again and make us say, oh, pray, massa, please, massa. So they're getting beat up. They're getting bullied because even though you're free, where you going to go? Who you going to tell? We was poor and didn't have nothing. Grandfather worked on a farm. That's the way we gets a house to live in. They give us an old shed on the farm for a house. When the Yankees come, some of the slaves went away with them. Yankees took all the animals, the golds, and everything of value. What they didn't take, they burned. Most of the slaves went wild. They give us some old kind of tough red meat to eat. You cook it all day and it won't get done. They say it was mule meat, and that's disgusting. They were giving them donkey meat to eat, which we already know you're not supposed to eat. So she says they ate it all day. They cooked it all day and it would never cook. That was the testimony of Miss Molly Booker. Again, to recap, thank you those for just joining us. Molly said she was born free, but it was still not an easy road because they still had to work for Europeans, and they still were subject to the dictates of society, getting beat, whooped, with no one to go to. So that's very, very interesting in her particular case. And once again, my apologies. I've been missing in action. As I said before, whirlwind. But I had to bunker down a little bit and get off into my project here, our project, the Left Project. So I'm going to proceed and go into Susan Brodus. Is said to be born in 1849, Massaponax, Virginia. And by the way, oh, wow, today is Wednesday, so-called Wednesday. So there will be another showing on that show on the TV. What's it called again? WGN. Another episode 2 of Underground. And so if you were with us, what day was that? Sunday? I'm just missing all the days. And this time change got me thrown off. But if you were with us, we watched it collectively because they posted it on Facebook. And we watched it for educational value. And see if we were able to see all of what we're reading in these narratives. And we're able to identify. So if you missed that, go ahead and check that out. So far the reviews are good. And it's hopefully when Amuna is not there commenting, you'll still be able to look into what you're seeing as well as what you've read and get a deeper understanding and also see how it could possibly relate to what we're experiencing today and what it looks like at its genesis. It's like it's like looking at a picture of your great grandfather when they were a baby. You're like, oh wow, that's what you looked like when you were a baby. You're all amazed. That's kind of like looking at these slavery movies. We're looking at the child, the adult now, what it grew up into, what this hatred, what this indifference, what this subjugation, what this illegal kidnapping, trafficking look like at its genesis. Oftentimes it changes shape and form. And people say, oh, you don't look anything like you did when you were a baby, but that's not true. We see that it still looks like what it looked like. And so the slave narrative, no, it's not the beginning of Black people's history, so-called Black people, but it gives you a look into what this institution looked like in its rawest form. So you will not be deceived or confused about what you are presently seeing today. Once again, that was Miss Molly Booker. We're going to read Susan Brodess. Again, she was born in 1849. Marietta Silver. Marietta Silver, let's see. Marietta Silver, what are you? A man or a woman, Marietta Silver? Like I said, I have a hunch that depending on who is interviewing them, that is going to determine how free they are with their conversation. They might have some reservations here. So I'm going to look back. It's in the back of the book. And Marietta, what's her name? Yeah, Marietta Silver is a Negro. So let's hit it. And she sounds like a woman. All right. It says, was serving, Susan Brodess says, was serving gal for Mrs. So she was a butler, buttress, whatever you want to call it. Used to have to stand behind her at the table and reach her the salt and syrup and anything else she called for, because she couldn't reach for it herself, right? Old Martha would spell out real fast anything he don't want me to know about. One day, Martha was fit to be tied. He was in such a bad mood, was raving about the crops and the taxes and the trifling niggers he got to feed. Gonna sell them, I swear for, he says, Christ. Gonna sell them, he says. Then old Mrs. asks which one he gonna sell and tell him quick to spell it out. Then he spell out GABE and RUFUS. Course I stood there without batting an eye and making believe I didn't even hear him. But I was packing them letters up in my head all the time. As soon as I finished dishes, I rushes down to my father and say to him, like Master say, father say quite like Gabe and Rufus, and told me to go back to the house and say I ain't been out. The next day, Gabe and Rufus was gone. They had run away. Martha nearly died, got to cussing and a raving, so he took sick. Mrs. went to town and told the sheriff, but they never could find those two slaves. Was gone to Freeland. And I expect they wonder many times how them niggas knew they was going to be sold. So they thought they were just so ingenious and smart. You know what I mean? And I remember when we were young, parents used to do that, spell out stuff that they didn't want you to know what they were saying. I'm wondering, did that come from the slave master? Because they just did it. They used to be like, get the baby to JUICE. And until the baby know what it's like, they're like, ha, juice. You know what I'm saying? Or put them to BED and they be on it. But yeah, that was the female narrative of Susan Brodess. So I'm gonna go ahead and get another one in here. Her name is Charlotte. Some of them are long, and I'm gonna read a few short ones. Some of them are long and some of them are short. Charlotte Brown, 1855. They don't know who's the interviewer, but it says the news come on a Thursday, and all the slaves been shouting and carrying on, telling everybody was all tried out. Remember the first Sunday of freedom? We was all sitting around, resting and trying to think what freedom meant, and everybody was quiet and peaceful. All at once, old Sister Carrie, who was near about 100, started into talking. Tain't no more selling today. Tain't no more hiring today. Tain't no more pulling off shirts today. It stomped down freedom today. Stomp it down. And when she says stomp it down, all the slaves commenced to shouting with her. Stomp down freedom today. I'm over here singing. Stomp down freedom today. Stomp it down. Was no more peace that Sunday. Everybody started to sing and shout once more. First thing you know, they done made up music to sing to Sister Carrie's stomp song and sang and shouting that song all the rest of the day. Child, that was one glorious time. So she's remembering the emancipation coming through. She had to be 10 because this is 1855, and she talking about, I guess, after the Declaration comes after the war. So Eliza Brown. Eliza Brown, born 1848, and they don't know who the interviewer is. She says, don't spec Mars Lincoln knew just how some of the soldiers was carrying on. All I know is what I see. Was standing right here in this same yard when Sheridan came marching into Charlottesville. Was in 65. It was, and the heavy rains had swelled up the rivers across the banks. Guess I was a gal about 10 years old enough to know a whiskey barrel when I see it. When the blue coats come swarming round at our house, and the one of the biggest horses of all, they say was General Sheridan. Horse and the general was all one color, both covered from head to foot with mud. See him take his hat off and wipe the mud off his face with his sleeves. Then he ordered up a wagon and had him lift up a great big barrel of whiskey and roll it right into my mama's house. He put mama in charge of that whiskey because my mother could read. Told mama not to give whiskey to none of them soldiers lest he show her a pass that was signed by Gerald Sheridan himself. Mama did what he said, but seemed like he must have give a pass to every one of them Yankee soldiers. For General Sheridan and his men rid away from Charlottesville, they were near a drop of whiskey in that barrel. So dude come in and they just like, again, this is some martial order stuff. They just have everybody, they just came and take occupation of the South. And she's, I guess, given the joke that it's like, don't get nobody this whiskey unless they got a pass. But dude, he gave a pass to everybody. For those who have just joined us, my name is Amuna Yisrael. Yes, I am well. I am good. Just, this stuff, but I just definitely, this is something that I look forward to as well, and just gleaning and getting information on how to navigate these waters. And so, if you have anything to say, feel free to do so here on the side chat on this YouTube here, and I am going to read some more. Eunice Brown was interviewed by William T. Lee. And William T. Lee, one second. William T. Lee was a worker, and he sounds like a man. And he also is a Negro. They had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Europeans on the case. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And 13 so-called black people, and they had fewer Europeans. So I just think that's always interesting to know. But we have Eunice Brown. Eunice Brown says 1849. She says they kept the slaves in the jail, and they would bring them out one at a time to be sold. Anyway, they captured you and then put you in jail waiting for you to be auctioned. Like, what did you do to deserve to be in jail? Anyway, there was a huge tree that had been cut down and the trunk shaped into a big block about 6 feet tall. Then they cut out other blocks from the tree and arranged them next to the first step, like so slaves could get on top the big block. And that's all she just, that was short. She just told you about what she knew concerning selling of slaves. So the next person's name is Fanny Brown. Fanny was born in 1851. Her interviewer was Faith Morris. And for those who don't know, Imuna, which is my name, Faith is the anglicized version of Emuna. So people always say, what does your name mean? It's Faith, and Faith Morris is a Negro already. So they say Negro, right? All right, let me go over here. All praise be to the Most High. Came, Sister Angel. Sister Angel, she was checking on me. She's like, sis, you good? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Thank you for checking on me. That's what happened when we begin to make these connections, when we begin to heal and grow together. We're actually concerned when we don't hear one another. And then we check on each other. You know, in this day and time where so many people are, even in these apartments, even in spaces where neighbors don't check on each other anymore. You don't look to hear if you hear people anymore. There's a big disconnect. And so we have to reestablish these things and bring these things back into existence. Fanny Brown. Fanny Brown remembers seeing a slave sold in Fredericksburg about 1860. I recollect one day I was in town and saw the crowd and decided I'd while waste some time watching it. I went up close among the white folks gathered round the warehouse, peeping in through the windows to see the slaves. Then after a big crowd come round, I heard a nigger trader say, Burn, that was the selling man. Let my niggas out. I see Mr. Mellon in the crowd, and he's a good buyer. Then old Bruin say, Jim, come on out. Jim, a big 6 foot tall slave, come out smiling, and his shirt was took off. And then they start zimming him or examining. They jerked his mouth open and looked at his teeth and then slapped him on his back. And then they said, this is a prime nigga. Look at these teeth. Somebody say $100, another $200, and so on till $1,000 was reached. Then Jim was knocked down to the highest bidder and was handcuffed and put in the coffle with the other slaves that had been sold. Isn't it kind of like the bidding, what the people do at the when they're coming out of college, these what they call the drafts, and they sitting there grinning, and these NBA drafts and the NFL drafts and the quote unquote black men are sitting there, they're big and they're strapped in and they're hoping that in this case, you know, they use money, but it's still the same thing. You know, you get a big deal or you get a big offer or you on the auction block. You still on the block because you about to go on the field and they just letting you get a cut so that you'll be more willing or compliant. But, you know, after they come out of those spheres or those atmospheres, they're damaged, you know, sometimes irreversibly for a short period of time, that their body's no use, their arms, their legs, their body, because of the overuse and the overexertion. It's the same thing. And sometimes if they didn't make plans for something else, they go broke or they get jacked up. So nothing much has changed. Mrs. Lisa Brown. Let me see, Miss Lisa. I'm gonna read a few more short ones. Miss Lisa Brown, 1859. Susan R.C. Bird. That's her interviewer. If you have any questions, feel free to ask or share questions or comments. She also is a Negro or quote unquote black person. I was born second year after Cox's snow. Mother and all her children longest to James Harrison in Sussex County. Yes, Harrison had a grand big farm and lots of niggers, she says. My mother was a cook and there was 8 of us children. Massa was good to all his slaves, but the old woman was the devil. When mother was in pregnant stage, if she happened to burn the bread or the biscuits, Mrs. would order her to the granary, make her take off all her clothes, sometimes but one piece. After she had stripped her stark naked, she would beat mother with a strap, beating the pregnant woman. Yeah. You know, it had so many prongs to hit you with. She beat all the slaves cruelly. That hell pigeon did. She called her a hell pigeon. Nigger whip was what she used. She used. Yes, the slaves used to run away from our flock and stay in the woods. I reckon they got plenty good something to eat, better than we all did where I belong, because they steal hogs and kill them. They would swing old swing hogs. It's good eating, I tell you. I done ate many and many a time. Swing a hog? Cost his good meat, she says. You don't know what you're talking about. Where's you been? You ain't heard that? So she sometimes they be getting mad with the interviewer, like, what you talk about? Okay. Then to you, sketch an old possum or old hares and birds and them things is good eating. I mean, of course you would say they're good eating, like they're not feeding you. So, one time I watched these people like out in the Amazon, and they was killing tarantulas and eating them. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And honey, you just ought to see them. They was fat because them hogs had plenty, no low watching. Okay, I don't know what that is. When they run away, slaves get tied in the woods. They come back home and all master would beat them up again. Then sometimes they take to the woods and stay again. I had an uncle named Anthony. He was with the Yankees when the Bluecoats was coming up to City Point Road with knapsacks on their backs. I saw him marching in line. My mother tried to get him to come out, but he didn't. Guess he got killed at the crater fighting. I was right there across the valley that morning. Here's how it was. Now she about to tell the story. The Federals was on one hill and the Confederates on the other, and neither one could move. Finally, one day, they gets the same idea at the same time. They both sides to dig a tunnel to the other fort. Well, the Northern Army had sense with those brains. They dug and they kept quiet, but the Confederates dug and talked. So the Federals knew what they was doing. The Federals heard that the others was almost through. So all at once decides their time has come. So they dumps powder and load tons of it in this tunnel. Then they strikes a match to it and everybody run. But even some of the Northerners got caught because it was so quick like. Did it make a noise? My heavens, yes. You couldn't hear out of your ears, the noise was so loud. Everything got dark and all couldn't even see the sun. Then the heads, legs, and arms and bodies come down just like hailstorm. Wow, man, that's ridiculous. And all them arms and legs and heads that had got up white come down black as a nigga. That's what powder does to white folks. So she's giving her testimony that during this fighting, during the Civil War, these dudes is digging a tunnel, both of them, and they put gunpowder in the tunnel, blow the jammy up, and it blew people apart. Like, that's a wild, crazy death right there. I'm gonna read two more, and we'll like I said tonight, I'm gonna be taking in the second portion and definitely be having a discussion on it. So Susie Burns is her name, 1842. They don't know who did the interview. It says, old Moss George used to drink something terrible, especially in the war days when he thought the slaves was going to leave him. And you remember this scene. The scene was also in Roots, when after night, they was all powerful, like, yeah, call me master. And when they was in threat, he came out there like, you could stay on, but I don't know what I'm going to do for you. And all of a sudden, his position changed when he feel like he don't have the power anymore. Very interesting. He used to sit in his big chair in the porch with a jug of whiskey by his side, drinking and watching the quarters to see that did none of his slaves start slipping away. But at a while, the Yankees come and get after Moss George so hard that he took and died, or maybe it was the whiskey that killed him. A Yankee soldier, one of the generals, I guess, told father the land was ours and told us we could have a piece if we paid the taxes. I still own a piece of that land. This is what Susie Burns is saying. She still owes a piece in the time of this interview of the slave master's land. Colored people still living on most of it, down to the third and fourth generation. I guess I'm about the oldest because I'm 97 years old, and that ain't no lie. Highway runs through it now, right across the stream too. Where they used to have a pole to cross, they got an iron and concrete bridge. A pretty bridge it is. Everybody come just a tearing across that bridge in them automobile cars. So that's the story of Susan Burns. She maybe didn't get her mule, but she did get some of Massa's land. And that's not the first testimony that some of them did come in possession. Actually, I met an elder yesterday. I want to bring him on to have a conversation. I was talking to him. He said his family came from Mississippi, and they were living in the 60s still on the land, over 80 acres that they got from their slave masters. and they were living and farming still on that land. And later on, his mother sold that land. But I thought his story was very interesting. So hopefully I can set a time to bring him on. It says Peggy Burton, and this is the last one. They don't know who the interviewer is. And it says here, not the last one, but the last one for today. It says, I ain't got nothing to tell you. I remember you all right, but I's done told you all I knows. I done told you that I was a little girl, slavery gal, and all about my mom and all that. So I's done told you everything. She's not hearing it. Peggy's like, I don't think so. I raised my children, sent them to school, and get them what education they got. And I's done raised my grandchildren and helped to educate them. Guess I's done through. I try to give them all the chances because I never had privilege to go to school because I come long during slavery days where the white folks spit in nigger children's faces and they couldn't help themselves that they did. I do all I can trying to help other folks. There's a little gal second floor from me, and I beg her to go to school and tell her she ought to take all the chances and go back to school because times ain't like they used to be. I was a slave and couldn't go to school, but if I had the chance these young folks have now, a days I make good use of them because I always wanted an education so that I could be somebody. But Lordy child, these children ain't taking life serious now. The child said she didn't go to school because she didn't have no shoes. Now, last Saturday, her daddy got her shoes. Then she promised me that she was going to go to school today. So I went over there to see if she was really going. But she was in the bed and said it was too cold to go to school today. I done told everything. So now I just chastise them and journey on. She says, last Sunday, they burned the mortgage on our church, and the oldest deacon stood for the church and sought the mortgage on fire. The pastor said, now all we got to do is beautify our church. It's all paid for. You members who owe back salaries just pay $1, then you are a clear member. Then he sent some deacons round to collect the dues from them slothful members. He told them not to hurt nobody's feelings, just be kind and gentle to everybody. Then the deacons went out and got a right good sum of money, and now we're going to keep up our salary and beautify our church. So we see different mentalities. It's interesting to note, like I said, Fannie Berry, at first she said, I'm not telling you, then she opened up. Peggy Borton, she was a little adverse to the idea of divulging what she knows. As you see, she deflected from slavery. She honed in what she thought was most important was education for her to quote unquote be somebody. And then she went on to speaking about the church. So you had some foreparents who didn't want to speak about the experience and thought that education alone was going to be the answer. And as we know, this had to be in the 30s because most of them is in the 1930s. These interviews are. As we know, that solely was not the answer. That solely did not do away with the system. That solely did not rectify racism. And so, but at this point, this is what they thought because this, in their estimation, was what they were lacking the most, or the opportunity to do so. So once again, I want to apologize for not for being a little scarce for the last few days during the day portion, but we're still going strong. We was in the wheat. We read a couple of narratives. If you missed the beginning, feel free to go back. And we will, today I have, tonight I have something. So most I willing, tomorrow we'll have both sessions, the morning and the night, and we'll return back to nighttime portion of Lewis Hughes, 30 years a slave. Is it 30 years a slave or 50 years? My mind is going right now. You guys understand. You hear my voice and everything. And so let me check and make sure anybody didn't have any questions. I don't see any questions or any comments at this time. So once again, I want to thank you for tuning in. Continue to be the voice that you want to hear in the world or the change that you want to see in the world. Continue to share these narratives, especially if you have teenage children, if younger children, they have child appropriate ones. Continue to share this history. Don't just let it be, entertainment. If you find value from it, invite others. Even if they don't come, one or two might see the value so that we can stop at least when other people are just going around in circles, we won't join them. You understand what I'm saying? We could at least have resolve and a soundness of mind to understand that this has a root and we're actually looking at the root and where it's coming from, even from before, because this is to place it properly and to be honest, this is the end what they're getting, the testimonies is the end. The narratives that we're reading at night, it depends on where that is. It's either the beginning or the middle, which people, and then it's only America, which gives you a different narrative. And definitely there are other narratives. My next study is in the Caribbean, but I think there's a wealth of information here. And so we're just going through it little by little. The Caribbean has a different story. Brazil has a different story. You know, South America has a different story. Everybody has a different story. And I think it's just help to with the communication. This may be the basics. People may think it's elementary or pedestrian, but this is where we get our foundation. And so once again, so far, good feedback. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I pray you have a blessed day. And try to check out, I'll try to check out the underground tonight. And then we'll talk about it. All right. I got to get back to work now. All right, everybody. Have a blessed evening.